It's something. Don't call you want. That better.
Alright, it's time to get aggressive and get the out. Because they're trying to box us in.
We're gonna make contact and we're boxed in.
Alright, they're fine now. Alright, out of the car.
Be advised, we've been struck, we've been struck.
Get out.
Don't you move! Don't you move!
Before any contact, before anything, guns already drawn inside the car. Then they shot a U.S. citizen 5 times. Her name is Marimar Martinez, 30 years old Montessori teaching assistant driving through her own neighborhood. And after they shot her, the United States government, these cops, labeled her a domestic terrorist. I'm Jeff Hampton, the people's lawyer, and I'm going to show you every piece of body cam footage in this case. I'm going to slow it down and show you exactly what these cops spent months trying to hide, because what's on this body cam isn't just evidence in a lawsuit, it's proof that federal cops planned to use violence against an American citizen before they ever got out of their car. October 4th, 2025, Brighton Park, working-class neighborhoods, southwest side of Chicago. That morning, CBP agents, Border Patrol operating under Operation Midway Blitz, are patrolling in an unmarked white Chevy Tahoe. And Marimar Martinez, a U.S. citizen born in this country, is driving through her neighborhood. She sees the agents and does what people in immigrant communities have done for generations. She honks her horn, alerting others to the presence of these officers. Now, I need you to understand something before I show you this next piece of footage. Everything she just did, driving on a public street, honking her horn.
It's something. Don't call you want. That better.
Now, and it never has been. But watch what these cops do when a citizen exercises her rights. If something you want, that better. This is body cam footage from inside the agent's Tahoe. This is important here. The shooter, Agent Charles Exum, was not actually wearing a body cam. This footage is actually from another agent sitting behind him driving through an American neighborhood, families and kids walking all around, and they already have their guns drawn as they drive through this neighborhood. Why is this important? Remember the standard under Supreme Court law. In order for a cop to use deadly force, they've got to be able to show that a reasonable officer in the same situation would have been in immediate fear of death.
It's something.
And the court has said,
It's something.
look at the total context of the entire encounter in order to determine if it was reasonable. But here, guns drawn. Driving through a residential neighborhood.
Alright, it's time to get aggressive and get the out.
It's arguable they weren't responding to a threat. They were actually seeking out one. Okay, play that back. A federal agent sworn to protect the people of the United States, talking about American citizen on her own street, exercising her First Amendment rights. But listen to what comes next. All right, it's time to get aggressive and get the out. It's time to get aggressive, not de-escalate, not create distance, not call for backup, but get aggressive. These cops skipped every step of the use of force continuum while
We are boxed in.
Alright, they're fine now. Alright, out of the car.
Be advised, we've been struck, we've been struck.
Government's case. They told us in federal court filings that Marimar Martinez rammed their vehicle, that she was the aggressor. But watch Agent Exum's hands on the steering wheel here. We're
gonna make contact and we're boxed in.
All right, out of the car. Be advised, we've been struck. We've been struck. Did you see that? He turned the wheel left towards Martinez's vehicle. He jerks left toward Martinez after his colleague said, "It's time to get aggressive." After another agent said, "We're going to make contact. We're going to make contact and we're boxed in." That's not a reaction. That's a plan. And here, in just a moment, I'm going to prove it to you. That justification was the sole basis for shooting her. And stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to show you new technology that these cops were using to actually hunt down Marimar Martinez. This is the most important evidence in the case. The government claimed Martinez rammed them. That was their justification for shooting her.
Alright, they're fine now. Alright, out of the car.
Be advised, we've been struck, we've been struck.
Get out.
contact with her in any courtroom, this is more than reasonable doubt. It's direct
Be advised, we've been struck, we've been struck.
with her and escalate the situation. But what happens next is even worse. All right, we're fine now. All right, out of the car. Be advised, we've been struck. We've been struck. Get out. Don't you-ing. From the moment he exits to the moment he fires is seconds, not minutes. Be advised, we've been struck. We've been struck. 5 shots into a woman sitting in her own car in her own neighborhood. She miraculously survived and drove to a nearby repair shop where paramedics were able to attend to her. But surviving the bullets was only the beginning, because now she had to survive the government's story. The government charged her, the woman who had received 5 gunshot wounds, with then assaulting a public servant. And then DHS did something that should make you extremely concerned. They turned around and labeled her a domestic terrorist. No allegation of her pulling a weapon, no criminal record, and a U.S. citizen. So you just saw the body cam. You know what actually happened, but the real question here is, what did these agents do after they shot her? And the answer is somehow worse than the shooting itself. I mean, think about it. If you just shot someone and you believed it was justified and you genuinely feared for your life, what would you do next? You'd be shaken. You'd need time to process it. But not Agent Charles Exum. He pulled out his phone and started bragging. I fired 5 shots, and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. He just shot a school teacher, and he's bragging about it like it's a video game. Exum then just said, I'm up for another round of F-around and find out. He shot a woman 5 times, and he's laughing about it. But here's why these texts are devastating for the cops in court beyond being morally repulsive. In any excessive force case under the 4th Amendment, you have to analyze the officer's state of mind. Did they genuinely fear for their life? And would a reasonable officer under the same circumstances have feared for their life and responded in a similar manner? When someone shoots in genuine self-defense, they don't count holes and they don't text F around and find out. These texts are what prosecutors call consciousness of intent. This wasn't a scared officer. This was a man who chose to shoot someone and then brag about what he did. And his commander's response, in light of your excellent service in Chicago, you have much left to do. Excellent service. And Commander Belvino, after praising this shooting, he was promoted. He went on to lead the Minneapolis operation where 2 more people lost their lives. And I'm sure you've heard of them, Renee Good and Alex Prey. Here's the problem. I don't care what operation's going on. When you reward violence, you're only going to get more violence. And that brings me to what should be criminal in this case, the cover-up. In any shooting case involving a vehicle, the vehicles are critical physical evidence. You preserve them. You photograph every mark.
Here's something.
Have a right to inspect them. But what did the government do instead? They let Agent Exum, the shooter, drive that vehicle for over miles. He drove from Chicago to Maine before the defense ever had a chance to inspect it. And when it got to Maine, a mechanic buffed the vehicle to remove any scuff marks. Now, the last time I checked, that was tampering with evidence in a legal proceeding. If you were involved in a shooting and you were in a vehicle and you drove that vehicle across country and had any type of alterations done to it, you could easily be charged with tampering with evidence or obstructing justice. But these federal agents, of course, nothing happened. But that's just the start. There was still the body cam, and the government fought for months to keep it sealed. They argued the body cam contained sensitive material the public should not see. Sensitive material, federal agents saying something and shooting a school teacher. That's what they didn't want you to see. And the bragging texts from Agent Exum, they argued they shouldn't be released because it will only serve to further sully Agent Exum, his family, and his coworkers. They're more worried about the feelings of an officer who shot a woman, a school teacher, and then bragged about it, than they are whether or not he acted legally. This is what Martinez's attorney called a counterfactual public relations war. The government wasn't just defending a case here. They were building a narrative. They shot Miss Martinez. They charged her. They labeled her a domestic terrorist. They then hid the body cam. They moved the car. They buffed the evidence, and then they argued the real victim was the agent's reputation. Now, unfortunately, it seems like this is how the system far too often works. Shoot first, build a story second, and then reconfigure or reanalyze the evidence. And all of this would have worked, but for one federal judge who stood up to it all. Now listen, I've done multiple analysis for many of the shootings that have happened recently, and each of these should be analyzed on their own merit and evaluated. But what bothers me is that Marimar Martinez is not alone, and this seems to be happening more and more frequently. Alex Prey, Renee Good, Cilio Gonzalez, the list goes on and on. So much so that Wikipedia now has a page that outlines every time someone is shot during an encounter with one of these agents. But there's one more thing the government didn't want you to know, and this should terrify each and every American. 5 days before Marimar Martinez was shot, before she ever honked her horn at that Tahoe, Borders and Customs Protection had already tagged her as a threat. Her photo, her information had been disseminated to every agent involved in Operation Midway Blitz. How is this possible? Because cops and the federal government have been building something that...
Surveilling U.S. citizens today?
No, sir.
Those people protesting, practicing this First Amendment right, photos of them, data taken, they're not being placed in any kind of a database?
There is no database for protesters, sir.
One of your officers in Maine said to one of the individuals protesting, "We're going to put your face in a little database." What does that mean? Do you have a little database
No, sir.
of Americans?
No, sir, we don't.
Then what do you think your ICE agent was doing to this individual when he said those statements?
I can't speak for that individual, sir, but I can assure you there is no database that's tracking United States citizens.
Monitored it all across the city of Chicago. They were looking for domestic terrorists, and they found a preschool teacher shopping for her classroom. And remember your Ring doorbell? Amazon scrapped a plan to partner with Flock to expand this exact surveillance network after it realized it could track human beings. But Customs and Border Patrol, they don't need Ring. They already have Flock, and they already have facial recognition cameras they can pull from Clearview AI. They also have Palantir combining government and commercial data to track your real-time locations. And when acting ICE Director Todd Lyons was asked about this under oath, he said this: "Are you surveilling U.S. citizens today? No, sir. Those people protesting, practicing this First Amendment right, photos of them, data taken, they're not being placed in any kind of a database. There is no database for protesters, sir." One of your officers in Maine said to one of the individuals protesting, "We're going to put your face in a little database." What does that mean? Do you have a little database of Americans? No, sir, we don't. Then what do you think your ICE agent was doing to this individual when he said those statements? I can't speak for that individual, sir, but I can assure you there is no database that's tracking genocide citizens. No database. 30 days of Flock images appear to say otherwise. Cops have built a surveillance machine that is now squarely pointed at American citizens. And when one of those citizens ends up with bullet holes, there's a cover-up that follows. Now, let me show you what happens when you put these cops' story against the truth. November 20th, 2025, before the body cam was even released to the public, the government quietly dropped all charges against Marimar Martinez. And they didn't just dismiss him, they dismissed them with prejudice, which means the government can never refile. It's over. The government is admitting by its own actions. There's no evidence to prove this case. The woman they labeled a domestic terrorist, they dropped everything. Quietly, without a press conference, and certainly without an apology. Oh, all without removing the domestic terrorist label from their accounts. But in February 2026, a judge ordered the release of all this evidence. And I'm going to put up here on the screen everything the government claimed compared to what the body cam footage and all the newly released evidence clearly shows. The government told you she rammed them. The body cam shows he turned into her. The government told you agents responded to a threat. The body cam shows guns drawn before anything happened. The government told you this was justified. Their own agent said, "Do something, be and time to get aggressive." The government told you she was a domestic terrorist. She's a Montessori teaching assistant driving through her own neighborhood. But to make matters worse, these lies didn't stay in press releases. They made it into a Supreme Court opinion. Justice Allo, joined by Justice Thomas, wrote the government's version of events as fact. In a Supreme Court dissent based on lies we just watched the body cam disprove. Move in real time. That's scary to me because the cover-up and the reframing of what happened here made it to the highest court in the country. The government told you this footage was too sensitive for you to see, and now you know why. Marimar Martinez testified before Congress. She was invited to the State of the Union, and in February of 2026, she filed a federal lawsuit. Now, this is the part that matters most, because if this can happen to Marimar Martinez, a school teacher driving around in her own neighborhood, it can happen to anyone. So let me tell you what you need to know to protect yourself. You have a right to be in your neighborhood exercising your First Amendment rights. You can drive on your public streets. You can honk. You can speak your opinion. This is not and has never been a crime. Number 2, if cops ever confront you, say these exact words. I am exercising my right to remain silent. I will not answer any further questions unless my attorney is present. Number 3, document everything. Badge numbers, vehicle descriptions, times, locations. Write it all down, and if you have witnesses, get their names and their numbers. And if you see something like this happening to someone else, film it all from a safe distance. That is your constitutional right, because that's the kind of evidence that the government can't drive to Maine and buff out. And finally, number 4, being a citizen doesn't make you immune from this kind of treatment. Miss Martinez is a U.S. citizen, but she was still shot, and she was still labeled a domestic terrorist. Your citizenship doesn't protect you, but knowing your rights and exercising them does. Speaking of U.S. citizens facing this kind of treatment, oh, and Commander Bavino, who said Agent Exom's activity here was excellent service, check out this next video where I break down every action of Commander Bavino's role in the shooting of Alex Prey, and whether or not it was legal. Was this reasonable self-defense? And what can we learn to make sure we protect ourselves in the future? See you over there.